And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Dark Souls, the board game. Now this is based on a very popular, and from what I understand, a very difficult fighting shooter kind of, or slash, I don't know what the kind of type of game is, game in which you are dead, but, well, in fact I know this because I opened the box and this was the first thing I saw. But you're dead in this game, but there's worse people and you're trying to kill them. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on. I just know that you're fighting big, nasty monsters, you and or possibly some fellow group. This is a cooperative game. It's a board game that comes with some fantastic miniatures. You will be using these miniatures to fight each other, gearing up with weapons, building up till you fight one big bad boss and beat him. Here's how it plays. Okay, well first we're going to take a look at the miniatures. Now this is my hand. I want to point it out because this miniature, look how huge this is. Now this is one of the bosses of the game. He's just a big, mean and nasty guy. But you can see that the miniatures here are very detailed. There's a lot of good detail on them. The heroes are in brown, so they're easy to differentiate when they're out there fighting. I think in this universe that it is either there's no gravity or you are required to hold a weapon that is bigger than you are. This gentleman here has a hammer which is bigger than the bodies of most of the bad guys that you'll be fighting over the course of the game. These guys I love because they have really cool shields and axes, which by the way are super pointy. Don't let this stuff stab you. And then their head, what happened there? Maybe it's from the end of Beetlejuice, I'm not quite sure. And then these guys have this gigantic bow. I mean, that thing is massive. And these guys here have nice swords. Now, the plastic isn't droopy. I guess that's good. So their stuff does stick out nice and firm. And you can see that the detail here is pretty good. Now, Sam says that it is not as good as Games Workshop, and so I'm going to take him at his word. But I'm still pretty impressed with the detail on these miniatures. Now each person is going to be playing a hero, and that hero is going to come with a miniature, like I already pointed out. Each of these heroes, there's the assassin, there's the knight, there's the herald, and there's the warrior. Each of them is going to get some starting equipment. So there are decks of cards in this game, and you're going to find the starting equipment that matches your hero. So here for the warrior, his starting equipment would be a battle axe, which would go in one hand. He would have his armor, which he's putting on his torso, and he has a round shield, which is going to go in the other hand. That's what he starts with, but as the game goes by, he's going to get more. Now, to get more, each player starts with some base stats here. So you'll see he starts with a 16 strength, a 9 dexterity, an 8 intelligence, and a 9 faith. He can get that up to 40, 35, 30, and 35. You can move your stats. To move your stats over the course of the game, you're going to need to use souls. It's kind of a currency here, and you will get them whenever you clear out a room. In this thing, it's called an encounter. You're also going to be finding treasure, and when you find these different treasures and items, each of these items, for example, this partisan here requires a 28 strength, a 17 dexterity, and a 35 faith. So that's going to require a lot of stats, but not only that, it doesn't show his symbol on it, so he can't use it. He can, however, let's see, find something he can use. He could use this Drang armor. Now, this is probably better than his armor that he has now. Oh, definitely is. But he needs an 18 strength. He doesn't. He only has a 16. 14 dexterity. He only has a 9. And that's it. But if he moved both of these up to tier 1, then he would be able to wear this armor. So that's kind of a handy thing to get these better weapons. So players are going to be wanting to move these up. It costs 2 souls to move from base to tier 1, 4 souls to move from tier 1 to tier 2, and 8 souls to move from tier 2 to tier 3. Down here is where you're going to be keeping track of your damage in an encounter. Whenever you get damage, you'll be adding red cubes here to show the damage that you've gotten. And whenever you exhaust yourself, or stamina tokens are going to be placed on this end. If all this is ever filled up, you are dead, which is a bad thing for everybody. At the beginning of each round, you'll lose 2 of these fatigue tokens, so that's not a bad idea, but it's harder to get rid of the red tokens, the damage, as you are taking them. Players will be attacking everyone, the different creatures and monsters. Let's show how that works. At the beginning of the game, you're going to pick who your mini-boss is that you're going to fight. And then after you beat the mini-boss, you'll fight a bigger boss. But here I have the winged knight, so I'll pick him for my mini-boss. And so he comes with a deck of cards. And then I'm going to look for a bigger boss to bring in. And the game comes with multiple bigger bosses and with their different decks of cards. And it also comes with a bunch of cards, that's these cards here, for each of the other creatures that are in the game. And we'll talk a little bit about those later. But the boss that you pick, the big boss that you pick, or the mini boss, is going to have numbers here at the bottom, and these are going to show encounters. These are easier encounters, medium, and then difficult encounters. And you're going to be placing a bunch of these boards out, connecting them together from doors to doors. You can see these connect like this. And you're going to be putting an encounter card of the different types on them. When you go into one of these rooms the first time, the encounter card reveals and it shows you what enemies will spawn on the 2 spawn points and what other items might show up. This shows a treasure chest will come. When that happens, you will place the enemies on those spots. Let's say these are the enemies that you're fighting. The door that you come in, your characters will come in on the spots here. Now these are called nodes. A node can hold up to 3 people. And so it can hold up people from, who are fighting each other, because your weapons will have basically a range of 0, which means you'd be needed at the same node to fight them, or a range of 1 node away, etc. And players and characters will be able to move from node to node as they're moving around, although terrain like treasure chests and gravestones and things can block that. If there's a gravestone, you can't go through it, and things like that. Now, when you're fighting, players are going to be attacking with their different weapons. When you attack with a weapon, let's show this battle axe that we showed earlier. On your turn, you can move and attack or attack and move. You get 1 space that you can move for free, but you can move more spaces, but each one's going to cost a fatigue. Then you will attack with your weapon, and so for no fatigue, I'll roll 2 black dice. For 2 fatigue, I'll roll 2 black dice, but it hits everybody in a spot. Now this game comes with different colored dice. We have black, blue, and orange. Each of those gets progressively better. Orange is the best. There are also green dice. These are used if you're trying to dodge an enemy. So with these 2 black dice, I would attack them. I would do 2 damage. I would then look at that person's cards. So let's say they're a hollow soldier. They subtract 1 from physical attacks. So this was a physical attack. They take 1 damage. They only have 1 hit point. So that monster would be killed. And so each of the monsters is going to have different things. You can see these sentinels, the guys with the tiny heads, have 10 hit points before you kill them. Now, the way each of these encounter works is 1 hero goes, then all the monsters go. Then 1 hero goes, then all the monsters go, etc. Until either a hero dies, which ends the mission, or until you kill all the monsters, in which case you win and get 2 souls for each player, each character that's there. When the monsters go, their cards are going to be programmed to show what they're going to do. Like this one says, he moves 1 towards the active player, and then he will try to hit the active player for 4 physical damage at a distance of 0. And so all these stats are right on the card. While the Silver Knight Swordsman will move 2 towards the active player, pushing anyone out of the way, and then he will do 5 damage to the active player, hitting everyone in that spot if possible. This guy here is going to go after the person with aggro, the person who just went, essentially. I'm sorry, did I say active player? I meant the person who's closest with that symbol. Here he moves 1 away, the crossbowman, from the active player, and then he's going to hit them with 3 magical damage, and it has infinite range. So you can see all these are different. And these are basic regular troops. When you're fighting a boss, all right, so the boss will show up. Now the boss actually shows up in a special room. This is the room that the boss will show up, a mini boss. And then when you fight the big boss, he'll show up in a room with the mini boss. When you fight a boss, each boss has a deck of cards. And so you will find their proper deck of cards. And each time the boss's turn it is, you'll turn over this card, and that card will tell you what they do. So this is not this boss, this is this boss. Yeah, bring this guy in here. And so here he has electric breath, and it tells you exactly how this boss moves. It shows you where their weak spot is. If you attack them on their weak spot, you'll get an extra die, and where they're attacking. And once the boss, each boss has different stats. So this gargoyle here has 26 hit points. When they're down to 12 hit points, they're going to have an extra card added to their deck from a special set of cards. These are like, for example, Swooping Cleave and Flying Tail Whip. So one of these cards is going to go on deck, and these cards are much nastier. In fact, sometimes these cards can be done multiple times. It will say on here, attack 2 or 3 times. Now, when this character is finished with their card, you set it aside and you keep going through the deck of cards. When they're done, you'll turn the whole deck over and they will keep attacking in that same method. So once you've seen the 4 different actions, or however many actions it is, in a row, you will know each time they're attacking that they will do it the same way. It's like they're programmed, so you can kind of try to figure out what this monster is going to do. And the monster also has 4 quadrants on the bottom as they're moving around this boss. And so the goal of the game is to kill the big bad boss. You're not going to do that with starting equipment, so you're going to have to come back here. This is the starting tile everyone is on. This is your campfire. Every time someone dies, you're going to click this down one, and this is going to start at a certain number depending on the number of players. And if you need to click and you're on 0, then you've lost. You can also come back here and rest, which resets all encounters, so you have to go back and fight them again, or you can go fight them again. This is also where you come to draw new weapons, or to go through weapons you've already drawn and equip them if possible. There's all sorts of weapons in this pile. Let's take a look at them. You've already seen how the different weapons, you've seen the basic weapon. Look how much better this weapon is. It's a blue die +1, although it can't hit right next to you. It has to be at least 1 distance away. For 4 fatigue, it's 2 blue dice +1. It rolls 1 blue dice on defense against physical attacks. And it can have 2 upgrades. This one here, Drake Sword, it even rolls orange dice. So you can see there's all sorts of different things. And then there's upgrades, like this heavy gem can be put onto a weapon that can take upgrades. And this weapon's attack gains +1 black dice. And so you can, for 1 soul, you can draw the top card of these. If you find treasure chests, you'll always get 2 more of these. But to get these, you're going to have to spend souls to upgrade your stats, usually, so that you can carry them. And much of the equipment is specifically for different heroes. When you kill the mini bosses, they will also drop different really cool pieces of equipment, which you will be able to arm again if you have the proper stats so that you can wear them. And that's basically it. There's a campaign version of the game which basically does the same thing but makes it somewhat longer, and you can save it from round to round. But your goal is to kill the big bad dude. You do so, you win. You get too many of your guys killed over the course of the game, you lose. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to talk about the things I liked first and then the things that I was not a big fan of. First of all, I like the miniatures. Now, I had played Bloodborne, the card game, so I've seen the artwork for this game. I never played the actual computer game or video game, and it's very dark, doesn't look like my style game at all, and Bloodborne, the card game, bore that out. This game is dark too, but these miniatures, I mean, a couple of them look kind of nasty, but for most of them look pretty neat, This is just a giant knight with a tiny little head. This guy here is a pretty cool looking guy with a big axe. So the theme may be dark, I don't know, but it doesn't feel that dark in the board game. And the miniatures look great. I didn't paint mine, I probably won't, but I'm sure some people are going to love that. The tiles are good. For the most part, I'll get to something I don't like about them. The character cards, the equipment, icons are a little small to see in them, but for the most part, the dice are good quality dice. The production value here is well done. I also really liked, I liked the idea of programmable movement. I like the idea of getting weapons and upgrading them. That's pretty neat. The game has some pretty interesting concepts as you move around and upgrade things. That's pretty much the only positive things I have to say, though, unfortunately. I understand that some people like a difficult game. That's fine. A difficult cooperative game. I like difficult cooperative games. But this one is difficult in a way that I don't know how to explain precisely, because it's just difficult in a way I don't enjoy. When you start this game off, you're having some pretty bad weapons. When you are done, you have some better weapons, but they're not that much better. They sound cool from the descriptions. But to get from having those bad weapons to get to having the good weapons, and you need the good weapons to be able to fight the thing, you have to grind. Now, I'm no stranger to grinding, but if you don't know what that term is, it's basically you just keep fighting and 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 slowly raise your stats and slowly get better stuff and slowly do that until you're powerful. I play the Final Fantasy series, and that definitely has a lot of grinding in it. The thing with the Final Fantasies is I can play them for a while and then put it away, and I'm playing it by myself. I do it, and also the way I am when I'm done is like, yes, look what I've done, I've accomplished. And it's not always boring. In this game, it is. You open that room and you run around on these nodes. By the way, side note here, the whole moving on nodes thing, I didn't like that at all. I'd rather there be terrain or whatever. The nodes just did not work for me. It's essentially a grid, and whatever. I just was not impressed with how that movement system worked. But anyhow, you come in, you fight the enemies, you're like, oh, okay, good, fight. And by the way, I also did not like the fact that one person goes, all the enemies go. Another person goes, all the enemies go. That's fine. It's just not that fun. It's this overwhelming sense of despair all the time. I understand that you want a sense of despair in these games to some degree, but I want also hope, and this game is full of so little hope. And so you're sitting there and you grind and you get some souls and you go back and you find really cool weapons that there's no way you can use. I mean, to upgrade to level 1 is 2 souls, then upgrade to level 2 is 4 souls, and upgrade to the next one is 8. That's 14 souls, and you're getting 8 souls per encounter for the party, not for you. And so it's just a slog and a slog and a slog and a slog, and we kill stuff and we upgrade and we upgrade and we upgrade, and finally we have these things, and finally we go to the boss battle. Now the boss battle is better than fighting the minions, right? And from what I understand, they've demoed the game over the past year by using boss battles, although it's tricky because the game is mostly about not the boss battle. But when you get to the boss battle, the cards and the boss moves around and fights you, and that's kind of intriguing as you try to figure it out. But here's the thing. The combat itself is simply roll some dice and see if you get numbers. And that's like a really old combat system. It's not that exciting in this game. It's like roll, I got 3. Roll, And there's not a lot of difference between the weapons. I mean, there's like poison, take a damage, and then you take the poison token off. Whoopee-doo. There's just not a lot of interesting things. The weapons are all kind of samey. This weapon does 2 damage. This one does 3. This one does 4. It's not the kind of breadth and depth I'd expect to find in the fantasies. Now listen, and this is important because I know some people are watching and saying, that's just like the video game. Well, maybe it is. But here's the thing. I'm not judging this on whether it's just like the video game. I'm judging this on, is this a good board game? The rule book here has lots of good rules in it, and they're like all over the place. There's a setup page, okay, great, and then there's some explanation, and then I go and there's more explanation, and then it tells you how to play part of the game, and then it talks about setup again. And I was like, oh, okay, and then it talks about how to do an encounter, and then the rules are all in here, but they're all over the place, and all these different, what does this mean? What does that mean? There's a nice little icon thing on the back, except it doesn't actually explain every icon in the game or what they all do. So I got to go back here, and I don't know. I found the game so boring. It's move, fight. And then if someone dies, because that can happen too. Now you have a potion that you can drink that will keep you from dying. But if you die, a bad roll, something happens and you die, then everyone's jetted out of the encounter. And if it happens a couple times, you lose the game. And then you got to start over again. How is that fun? I just don't get how people enjoy that. This is a game in which you're going in and you're fighting baddies, right? There are lots of those games out there. Descent and others. This one is living and dying off the strength of its IP, Dark Souls. That's not good enough. It needs to be an amazingly cool game. The dice, which look like Conan dice, reminded me of Conan, and thinking, wow, Conan, which is another theme I'm not a huge fan of, but Conan, the theme back and forth and jumping, and you saw people, swinging on ropes across ships and throwing things, and it was exciting and interesting, and this one is just doesn't have that excitement. The guy comes forward and swings his sword, and I move over here and dodge, and it feels so mechanical. So, unfortunately, this one isn't for me. I love the fact that there's a big stack of equipment that you get to draw and then realize that you don't have the stats for, or it's not for you. That's like a tantalizing Would you like a weapon? No, I would. But you're not going to let me have that weapon, are you? No, I'm not. And then there's a campaign method. And I'm like, what? This game wasn't long enough? Which, on the side of the box here, it says 90 to 120 minutes. Someone's been fibbing. It's a really long game. It's a cool-looking game. But in the end, it doesn't differentiate itself out and actually seems like a step backward in this style. This one just is not for me. Dice Tower Judgment? Yeah, that's right, buddy. My hammer's bigger. I think Bloodborne fans are going to like this. Dark Souls fans are going to like this, but not me.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!